What's up, y'all? It's Shuffle, and today we're going to take a look at a tier list on the website The Gamer that ranks every darkest dungeon hero except Musketeer. And we're going to go through this and argue with everything that we can argue with just because it's fun to do. I know dunking on games journalism is a pretty tired topic, but you know what? I made a video on this before it was cool from years back, so I think I have earned my veteran credits and my hipster, take for the day. And so we're going to go through this, talk about some stuff, and before we get started, if you've not already followed me on Twitch and joined Discord and all that stuff, please do so. And if you've already done that, you're just beautiful. So thank you for the support. And so with this, the first thing jumps out at me is this paragraph here. It says, of course, the best classes depend on the player's preferred playstyle, and different strategies require different heroes. Here are some that are useful in a variety of situations or really stand out in a specific role. So this is just trying to hit the word count on your assignment. Because everyone, you say, here are some that are useful and all that. You're talking about every single class, so why is the word some here? And this is just fluff. This means nothing. So starting off with an Aquarian at 17, I think the consensus, or I should say the conclusion of this, is she has the worst base stats, lacks a solid attack move, and then she has, no form of viable support. Even though she has Protect Me, which is pretty good, she has Vapors, and she has Flash Powder. All of those are actually pretty dang good support moves. So even though you can say that she is the worst character from a combat perspective just because of the numbers, she gets you a ton of money. So I'm going to argue with that one too, even though I put her at the bottom of my list. Now, we can actually get mad. So right here, Crusader in 16. It's not that Crusader's bad, it's just that he's not good at any one thing. I get this argument all the time. And I understand that some people prioritize having a specialist over a generalist, but the strength of a generalist is the fact that you can mesh a lot of team comps around them just because they can fill a lot of gaps that you may have. So it'd be like, man, I'd like to take Jester, but I don't have one, right? My Jester's not at veteran level, or he's in the Abbey getting some stress healing and stuff like that. You can still take Crusader. But no, we're not talking about that. Or at least if you want some stress healing. But then he can also do other stuff. It's not just the fact that he does a bunch of things okay. It's the fact that he does a bunch of things. And that is something that I think people often overlook. And so he can be used to tank damage, deal out damage, and certain builds can even highlight his support and healing abilities. I feel like Inspiring Cry doesn't really need anything to support. You just put it on and it gets huge value. His low speed makes others better suited for these roles. But then anyone that has higher speed that can do his stress healing, like Jester or Houndmaster, they have worse defenses. You don't have to worry about Crusader when he's in your party. He can just take damage and keep going, and that's all pretty cool. And also, unlike the other characters, he is a character that can do pretty much everything he wants except stun and smite and all that from anywhere in the group. So if you want to do some damage, he can do Holy Lance from the back, he can smite from the front, he can stun from the front, he can heal from anywhere on the map, which is incredibly useful. So I really disagree that having other people can outclass him, because he can just do so much from anywhere, and it makes him very, very flexible. This final sentence is one that we have to pay a lot of attention to, but when building a team of 4, it's better to go with specialists. We'll see exactly in a couple posts, I forget which hero it is, but this idea, this logic goes out the window almost instantly, so it's very inconsistent. I already messed up, but you know what, we're going to redo this. So this is when this list had a huge red flag to me. So it says Highwayman down at 15. And you can disagree that this character isn't the best or top 2. You could say he's top 3 or something like that. But you can't put this character in the bottom 3 or the bottom 4, whatever this is. That just doesn't make any sense. So the Highwayman is incredibly powerful in the early game, but towards the mid game, he becomes outclassed by many other classes. Which classes are those? Because there are no other classes that can break action economy as hard as this guy can. He can deal some major damage at first, and his bleeding effects are incredibly useful. He actually does more damage the farther into the game you get, because you get better trinkets, and also his riposte scaling goes up. But even riposte starts to pale over time. I just said that it gets stronger actually as you get farther into the game. His lack of durability becomes a major liability. He has 43 HP, I believe, and that's actually good enough. It's not Grave Robber, it's not Occultist. It's fine. It's actually a solid amount of HP. Players should use him in the beginning, but keep an eye out for someone to replace him in the mid-game. Who? Who is replacing this? Who is replacing someone that can get 3 to 5 attacks a turn? Who is going to replace that? No one replaces that, dude. I'm just so upset just right there. This is, because we shared this in Discord, and when I read this, I'm I'm making the video. It's done. It's right here. So Arbutus is at 14. We just saw Leper, sneak peek. But here we go. So this is what I was saying when the Crusader logic of specialist against generalist just goes out the window. Because the Arbutus is powerful in the 3rd and 4th ranks, assuming she never leaves those spots or has another class to support her if she does. Because of this, she doesn't rank very high. You just said that specialists are better, which is why Crusader is weaker. And here you are saying a backline specialist is bad for being a specialist. So it's already inconsistent. Don't misunderstand. The Arbutus, this is misspelled, can be powerful with the right team setup. I know Arbutus isn't a common word, so I'm not going to ding points. I just noticed that and I called it out in real time. But she's very picky about positioning. Without any abilities to maintain that position, your other characters are supposed to help her do that. And then also, there are a lot of characters that want specific positions at all times. It's not exclusive to her. And whenever I do criticism, or if I see criticism about classes, I always try to make sure that we pick, or at least discuss, ideas that are not universal. So if something can be applied to like 6 characters, it's not like a good argument. Because Vestal, one of the best characters, is very position dependent. Plague Doctor's position dependent. Hellion's position dependent. Leper. Like there's so many characters that need to be in a certain spot. There are only a few characters that are actually really good at dancing. So to use this as a negative in this game is not the correct way to go about it. But don't misunderstand. She can be powerful with the right team setup. This is true for any character. So that's I hate these just general statements that can be applied broadly to everyone. Leper. Oh, yeah. Oh, I skipped. Dang it. I'm trying not to do that, but the way my scroll wheel is just not helping me here. So Leper. The Leper is a popular class and easily the best damage dealer in the game with an absurd base damage and strong abilities. I love all of these fluff terms, and strong abilities. Like, what are they? He has Chop and Hew and he has Revenge, and then the rest of his stuff is pretty good, but it's nothing broken. The other thing that I need to contend with as well is where it says he has to be in the 1st or 2nd position and has abysmal accuracy. These two things can be fixed before you leave town. You can build the proper team and give him an accuracy trinket, and that issue is pretty much nullified. Even the author admits this. This can be offset by certain trinkets and teammates, but this results in the entire team needing to be built around him. So again, we are already leaving the idea that Crusader is bad for being a generalist and saying that Leper and Arbutus are bad for being specialists. So this inconsistency drives me nuts. An annoying number of his hits won't connect. Give him accuracy. You already said what the answer is, and he can't reach the enemies in the 3rd or 4th position anyway. That's actually probably his biggest weakness, making him something of a liability. Except he's incredibly self-reliant, and yeah, he does like help, but he sometimes doesn't actually need it. And the other thing too is his biggest shortcomings are, yes, the targeting, but also the fact that most of his common enemies that he is swinging at in the front line also have protection, which gets rid of his biggest strength, which is why certain characters like Hellion, I would argue, are better, because Hellion can cheat and put her damage, which is meant for the front line, into the back line. Same with Shieldbreaker. Leper can't do that. And at the same time, Leper hits tanky guys up front, which makes him seem not as effective. So this is a case where, with both Arbutus and Leper, I actually agree with their rankings for the most part. It's just the logic behind them definitely misses the point. I already sneak peeked the Jester. I'm just going to keep doing it, dude. I'm so used to the 2 paragraphs, and now we have the 1 paragraph, so we saw Occultist, but who cares? The Jester is a bit complicated to use and generally requires a versatile party to be effective. Again, we're punishing people for being specialists, even though he's kind of a generalist in a lot of ways. Unfortunately, his main benefit is providing position control, on your team, because he only has a couple moves that move him, and he only has 1 move to get back, so it's not actually that strong. And stress healing. So right here, the main benefit of Jester is, the stress healing is a good thing, but the main benefit of Jester is Battle Ballad. That is why you take Jester. You take Jester to supercharge your party and crit stuff and run over the enemies in 2 turns. That is why you take Jester. It's kind of the stress healing, but you don't take him for dancing. You can do it, but you don't take him for that, which doesn't mean much with your average class. He's great if you have heroes like Arbutus or Grave Robber. Those are 2 of his worst pairings, because Arbutus Like, she does want the crit buff from Battle Ballad, but it's very hard to get a solid healer in your team if you want Arbutus to be doing damage, which means you're stuck with Flagellance or Crusader at that point, because you're going to put Jester into rank 3 because you have to use Battle Ballad. And Grave Robber is also not a great class for him, because she already has some pretty good accuracy on lunge, and she already has enough speed to where his speed doesn't help her at all. But pairing with someone like Leper, and it's just annoying. Leper is his BFF. Leper is the best partner for Jester, especially for the reasons listed above. Leper has trouble hitting stuff. Jester fixes that. Leper has a massive damage stat. Giving him crit makes him a complete powerhouse. So this is actually his best teammate. And to call it annoying is, I don't know, annoying in itself or just incredibly short-sighted. Yes, I gave away the Occultist. I'm going to try and slowly scroll down. Okay, I think that's the end of it. I'm not going to spoil the next one. The Occultist is a support class and a decent healer. He's actually, I wouldn't say decent healer. He's very sketchy. Unfortunately, he also has low health, low damage, and his heal doesn't always actually heal. But when you take Occultist, you're not taking him as a healer. He's like a support class that can set up your offense on your team, and he just happens to have a heal if you're in a pinch. Same with Crusader. Crusader can stun stuff and hit stuff kind of hard and dance and stuff like that. And then he has heals if you need it. Same with Flagellance. You're trying to bleed everything out in like a few turns, and then he has heals in case he needs it. Same with Occultist. It's not like Vestal. Vestal's like the only primary healing class because that's just what she's good at. She's built for that. But every other class has a heal as a bonus. And even if you want to say that Occultist has a pretty sketchy or sometimes bad heal, which is true, he can use it from anywhere, which means any Occultist build can always have the heal. So that is kind of part of the reason why it's inconsistent, is because it has such a powerful upside and you can use it from anywhere. He has some incredible critical bonuses and he can really mess with the enemy's positioning. So his crit bonuses are pretty nutty, and he only has one thing to mess with positioning, so that's kind of a small point. But he's as likely to cause a dying teammate to bleed out as he is to heal them. Well, not statistically speaking, but it certainly feels that way at times. This is only an issue at low level. Like, the zero heal is a constant threat. Mathematically, it's very low. But the zero heal bleed kill on your teammate is only a huge threat at lower levels. It's not actually that big a deal when you get higher level because the resists on your heroes just get so naturally high that it's non-existent. It takes a special party to support the Occultist. No, he's a support character. He can fit in a variety of parties. Like that's the complete opposite of what a support is. A support is someone that you can drop into a mix of parties and they have something to offer. So you can put Occultist in the front and he becomes this complete stun machine, and he can drop Weakening Curse or marks or pulls and heal and sometimes stab stuff and do pretty well there. Or you can put him in the back and he has a backline cleave and he can still pull and he can still mark and he can still use Weakening Curse and he can still heal. So it's not right to say that the party is supposed to support the Occultist. The Occultist supports the party. It's completely backwards. And even then, there are no guarantees. The only thing that's inconsistent is his healing. Everything else that he has is very consistent and actually super good. Except for Roof Spaghetti. That attack kind of sucks, honestly, unless you're in the Cove. You can also tell who doesn't have a lot of Occultist experience if they never mention the stun. Because the stun, like once you learn to put Occultist in the front and spam that stun, this character gets so good that it's really hard to put him like even in the bottom half of a list. So when I'm reading this and I see no mention of the stun, I completely know that this person is playing them in the back and just trying to use them as a primary healer. Alright, did I not mess up? I didn't. Shieldbreaker at 10. It's like Hyper Dan's game, dude. Shieldbreaker is a solid fighter. She's not the best class, but she's certainly not the worst. She's basically a tank that sacrificed some durability to be able to target any position while she's in any position other than 4th. She sacrificed durability because she can block, and she actually gets that durability back with like most of her late game trinkets. Between her District and Cure Bully and Spectral Spear Tip and even her camp skill, she can get up to like Crusader HP. And she can block. That's freaking nuts. So she's only weak in terms of her like HP total in the early game, and she can still block. And I would also not call her a tank at all just because she has no way to like draw threat to herself. So that means that Shieldbreaker is just primarily a damage dealer with a ton of utility in things like Puncture. And she has a lot more survivability because she can block. Grave Robber I would not call a tank, but she has some survivability because she can get high dodge numbers and go stealth. If the player is unsure who to pick, then the Shieldbreaker isn't a bad choice, as she's flexible and well suited for most parties. So before we just roasted Crusader for being a generalist and not being a specialist, and now we're saying the Shieldbreaker is good because she can fit in a lot of parties. So again, this logic for like the 6th time is just out the window. And I would argue, if you think you can just drop her into any team and she can do well, that should make her a good character, not a 10th. She's also one of the game's few DLC classes, meaning that base game players won't have access to her. That's a fair comment. I also don't think that should be a reason to detract from her, because we're just going to assume if you're ranking her that people have her. Alright, who's number 9? Abomination, my god. I made the mistake of putting this dude at the bottom. Although we're kind of like halfway through, so 9. This might even be higher than how I had him. I'm actually not sure. But like, I had so much in A tier, but that's besides the point. So again, this person probably doesn't have a lot of A-bomb experience, because actually we're going to see exactly who he doesn't have experience with in this comment or this paragraph right here, because this one is very eye-opening. The Abomination is very powerful in his dark form, but also a major liability due to the added stress levels. So right here, his transformed form, I guess I should just say transformation, like, it's good, but A-bomb's strength is actually in human form. Like, you don't have to transform with him. I was streaming, I think like yesterday or the day before, and I was not transforming with A-bomb at all because I had Broken Key and Padlock of Transference, and I just left him human the entire time, and I just stunned everything and kept using Blight. And the chat was going like, man, you're not transforming. Why aren't you transforming? Are you going to transform? It's like, no, I don't need to. I actually don't need to. So again, this is someone that just thinks, man, I grab Abomination, I press transform, and then I just slap stuff, and you don't have to do that. You can actually just use his very awesome stun and his double blight and stuff like that, and he's still a good character. This second sentence, though, even with stress healers like Grave Robber, this can still be a problem. Yes, Grave Robber, everyone's favorite stress healer. You know, Toxin Trickery, which takes like 15 stress off the whole party. Pretty sure the author probably meant Jester and just got like flipped around and said Grave Robber for some reason, but it's still funny to see something like this. He still has usefulness in human form, which is why the Abomination doesn't rank lower, but exploiting this class's full potential requires a very specific party. It doesn't. It actually doesn't. Abomination is another class that's actually really self-sufficient. All you have to do is have someone that he doesn't disagree with if they get out of position, like if he has to slam or something like that. And then you have to pick good trinkets for him. The trinket choice is the hardest thing of building this character. It's not the party. Because if you're taking him somewhere that can do Blight, you can just drop him in rank 3 or rank 2, and he's fine. He just provides stun and Blight, and that's good enough. So like I said, trinkets are the hardest part of this class. It's not the party. Numero 8, Flagellance. This is actually higher than how I had him, and I am reconsidering this the more I watch Thick Veiny Sausage make videos on this character. But the Flagellant is both the most selfish and selfless class on this list. So again, we're doing this thing to fluff up word count to hit the page requirement. His full potential is unleash the more stress, damage, and bleeding are done to him. It's just stress and damage. Bleeding is a form of damage. He's an incredible support for everyone else, but it requires a balancing act of keeping him close to death without actually killing him. He has higher than average death blow resist. He doesn't get mortality debuffs. He has pretty much like 40% heals on 2 of his moves, like close to 50 that can crit, and he heals the party and stuff like that. He's fine. As a result, having a healer like a Vestal is almost required to pull this off. No, actually. If you want him to be babysat at low HP, you need a guard. You don't need healing, you need a guard. So again, you don't need Vestal for this, and since he can heal himself and he has 5 shots of these moves, you don't need to give him any healing. You just let him get hit a couple times, protect him if you need to so he doesn't like, you know, hit Death's Door and bleed out just by accident. Then you let him hit Exsanguinate, and he's back to half-life. It's fine. And there's no mention of how he just doesn't work in the ruins or like bleed resistant places. There's no mention of how Rapturous, even though it gives him like a buff, it still sucks because it's an affliction. Then this article treats him as a damage dealer, and it doesn't talk about his, I mean, it says incredible support, but like it doesn't actually explicitly say his healing is godlike. I'm at the point where I would put Reclaim as like one of the probably 10 best abilities in the game. It's that nutty. But no, we're going to start talking about stuff like we need Vestal instead of Man-at-Arms to keep this dude at low health. Okay, I'm going to jinx myself. I'm getting pretty good at not scrolling to the next person, but we see Grave Robber. Can I do it? Oh, I did it. I jinxed myself. The Grave Robber is an excellent pick for strong versatility. She's just a damage dealer. She's a solid range attacker. That's actually her worst thing that you can do with her. She's better as a dancer and like a super big damage nuker with lunge. That's pretty much like what she's best at and arguably her only viable thing at this point. Poison darts are okay for certain bosses, but that's it. Her range build is just bad. Like if you're going to do range grave robber, bring an Arbutus. So yeah, she's a solid range attacker, can dodge enemy attacks, and her Shadow Fade open is brutal when done properly. So I know this person probably watched my video at this point and just didn't want to copy what I said, because the grave robber with the Shadow Fade thing, the one contention I have gotten consistently with grave robber from like every single person has been Shadow Fade. I've had people argue with me that starting her in rank 4 to open with lunge is better. I've had people argue that Shadow Fade is completely worthless, and any person that has something positive to say about Shadow Fade has said they thought it was garbage, and then they used it and they're like, oh, this is actually pretty good. So that means that there is no one who thinks this move is viable except for like me and probably like 2 other people, and I doubt this person is one of them. So at this point, if you're gonna like watch my video and then write your own article, at least just rip mine off entirely and then do the plagiarism. It's fine. It's actually not fine. I'd be even more pissed off if that happened. The problem is that she does a lot of position switching, which is a problem if the party isn't set up for it. So this is a very easy workaround. You don't need to set up the whole party to be some kind of just massive dance machine. You just need like one person, or I should say 2. You need 2 teammates that can function when she shadow fades and then when she lunges. That's all you need. That's all you need with this character. You don't need like Shieldbreaker, Crusader, Grave Robber who just move all around each other and just get like, you know, triple lunges and double pierce, double holy lance, stuff like that. You don't need that. You don't need that at all. She does have some abilities to help dictate her own position, which offsets this a bit. I don't even know what to make of that sense. It's just like, yeah, she's a dancer. She is a dancer, has dance moves, yes. Man at Arms. Speaking of, Man at Arms guide coming probably Friday, maybe Saturday, not sure yet. Man at Arms is a tank incarnate. He's essentially a combination of the Crusader and Leper. That's actually just not true at all. The Leper is a boss-killing damage monster with like a ton of self-reliance, and the Crusader is a support that has really good stress healing. You could argue that he's closer to the Crusader. He's definitely nowhere near the Leper. Like that's just, like they're 2 different characters. And with the Crusader, they're both supports, so I can kind of see that. But then Guard and the way Man at Arms plays is just vastly different. He gives like team buffs and stuff like that. And Crusader's just there to stress heal and stun stuff. And then the other difference is that Crusader puts out way more damage. But yeah, he's essentially a combination of the Crusader and Leper with the ability to smack units on all positions except 4th. Crusader can hit all 4. Leper can only hit the first 2. So where's this combination come in, where he's supposed to be like both of them? This balance of durability, support, and even some low-level offense is incredibly useful on any team. This is pretty close to a correct statement because the Man at Arms does fit okay in a lot of teams. He's kind of like a drag and drop character. But again, we punish the Crusader and put him in 16th because he's a generalist and he's actually a support. But now here we are saying that the Man at Arms can be used in any team, and that makes him good. The Crusader can be used in almost any team, but that makes him bad. I don't understand this. If the party needs a tank, this is the one. Yes, this is actually a correct statement. This is the only time you should be taking Man at Arms, usually to like kill a certain boss where he excels. Otherwise, in like hallway fights and stuff like that, or just regular missions, he's kind of crappy. He's definitely not 6th. I would not put him there. He just shows up and becomes MVP for like 3 fights in the game. That's it. All right, let's see who's next. Bounty Hunter. Let's see what the reasoning behind Bounty Hunters. I like how these just get smaller and smaller. Like this person, I don't know if they just checked out and didn't want to do this anymore, or if they just didn't pay as much attention to these characters, or like they wanted to really put the effort in at the front so people just kept reading. I feel like that's almost a trick where you put all the effort into the front of the article and they're like, okay, I'm going to keep reading. Okay, I disagree, but this is a, you know, I understand. I keep reading. And then it just gets lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter as you scroll down. The Bounty Hunter has excellent crowd control and can devastate the opposing Lovecraftian horrors with single target attacks. This is true. He does lack durability due to his light armor exclusivity. I don't know what this means. He has more HP than Highwayman. He's actually got a pretty respectable amount. I think he's got 45. And when we're talking about light armor, like Grave Robber, I would consider maybe light armor because she's, you know, 10 HP under him, or like 7, 9, something like that. I can't remember. And then you have Houndmaster, you have Occultist, you have Shieldbreaker before she gets powered up. Those characters are light armor. This dude is not light armor, and he does have to target enemies one at a time. But between the stuns, range, and enemy position disruption, he's a very useful unit. So we're talking about the stuns, which are pretty good, the range, which is pretty good, and the disruption, which is, it's there. But we're not talking about the fact this dude can just like crit for 60. If you just put one mark down, you just obliterate stuff. Alright. As much as I've been ripping up on this person too, this is actually the closest thing to a correct take that I see. I disagree with putting Bounty Hunter 5th, but I do agree with pretty much all of this because I do like Bounty Hunter's control kit. I think he's actually very powerful in that regard. So I guess I can reserve my irritation for this one. Vastal. Alright, can I not? Oh, I did it. Okay. I just want to make sure I can see it. The Vestal is the best healer in the game, hands down. Whether it's a tough battle or a lengthy dungeon, her healing powers are always welcome and make her a mandated part of most players' teams. People say this all the time. They're like, why isn't Vestal in S tier on your list? She's almost required. She's in all your background footage. And then I tell them I beat the game. Like the first time I beat the game, I did not take a Vestal to any of the endgame stuff. I did not take her. I took Occultist. So you don't need her. She's never mandatory. She's just pretty solid. What I also think is funny is that the author so far has really nagged on people for their positioning dependency. Vestal's like one of the most position-dependent classes in the entire game, especially if you run Bonk Vestal. She has to be in rank 2 if you use certain trinkets. And then for her healing, she has to be in the back. Unlike these other healers who can heal from anywhere, even Flagellance can use Reclaim from anywhere, she cannot heal from anywhere. She has to be in rank 3 and 4 to single target, and then 2, 3, and 4 for a group heal, and if she's in 1, she does nothing. Yet mysteriously, this is no longer an issue for this character. She lacks some combat finesse in the mid to late game. I don't understand why this person keeps referencing the mid to late game. The only thing that changes is just the scaling on the stats, but everything's pretty balanced for the most part, and some characters like Highwayman get better the further into the game they get. Shieldbreaker gets better in the mid to late game, which actually I didn't think of before. So this person is constantly bringing up the mid to late game transition and how characters fall off. When Shieldbreaker becomes strongest at level 6, she has the biggest power spike in the game, and there's no mention of that when they're talking about her. Anyway, she lacks some combat finesse in the mid to late game, but her healing abilities hold up both in battle and at camp for the entire game. Her healing is actually weakest at the start of the game just because of the ranges on some of the heals and the fact you can't find healing trinkets reliably. She's actually her weakest at the early game, so I'm surprised that they're talking about mid to late game is where she excels, but her kit just doesn't change. She has consistent healing, she has group healing, she has an okay stun to use, and she always has that. That's all she has in like most parties, and she has that all the time. It is actually one of the most consistent kits in the game, and it scales like almost perfectly for the level of content you're doing. So I don't understand why there's like combat finesse in mid to late game. She has no like, you're just stunning and healing with her, and sometimes you zap. I really don't understand the statement. Before we go on, do you have any guesses on who number 1 is? The answer may surprise you. Alright, Houndmaster. Only leaves us 2 more. Okay, see the top of the number? I didn't ruin this by accident. So Houndmaster is a damage dealer, support, and crowd control unit that can hold his own in a fight. Okay, again, we're fluffing up our sentences. There's tremendous adaptability and versatility. So Crusader, who is a generalist support, Occultist, who's a support, is also low rank, but for some reason the Houndmaster, who's also tremendously adaptable instead of just a generalist who has to be replaced by a specialist, and versatility means he can be part of any team and be considered useful. That's actually the exact argument I made for Crusader, but you know what? Crusader's 16th and Houndmaster's 3rd. The other argument is that if you want to go stress healing, Jester's better, Crusader's better. If you want to go tanking, Man-at-Arms is better. If you want to go stunning, other characters are better. Do you see how this game is played? Do you see how quickly you can get, like, you can completely diminish someone's effectiveness by just bringing up what they do and then saying other people do it better? This person at the start of the frickin' article said, you should be taking specialists. And in here is putting a freaking generalist character in 3rd. The reason I would also argue that he's weaker than Crusader for what he's doing is Crusader has a pretty good stun. I think it's 10% lower, but it does really good base damage. And Crusader's stress healing is consistent. It's just a flat number. Houndmaster's stress healing is actually at its worst because the chance to get the stress heal at lower levels is really bad. And then it scales up to like 74%, which is okay, but still not amazing. And for the record, I'm not disagreeing with the idea that Houndmaster is tremendously adaptable and versatile, and can be on many teams. That's actually true. It's just, like, why are we valuing it here when we weren't valuing it before? He struggles a bit against enemies resistant to bleed, but he's powerful against bosses or any horror that is classified as a beast. So we're not going to talk about how, even though he's kind of weak if they can't do bleed stuff, and I shouldn't even say weak. Like, yeah, he loses some damage if the enemy can't bleed, so that's just the ruins. You can still bleed stuff in the Cove. And we're going to gloss over the fact that he has the best mark in the game. He has mark synergy, so if you need him to do direct damage, he can do plenty of direct damage. We're not going to talk about how his dog treats take up space in your inventory, because that's actually a major point against him. No, we're not going to talk about any of that. We're going to say that this generalist character is ranked 3rd, even though the other generalist character in Crusader is ranked 16th. Now to give away who's number 1 by telling you who number 2 is, it's Plague Doctor. It's PD-chan. The Plague Doctor is easily the best support in the game, be it offense or defense. She can blight and stun the entire enemy team and cure allies of blight and bleed. She actually can't stun rank 1. She can also nudge the enemy's position around a little and stun certain enemies. That's the same thing said twice. If the player needs someone to take down a troublesome backline fighter, this is who to pick. I mean, if you want to kill them over 5 turns by rotating stun and blight, I mean, sure, she kind of needs help. Now, if you want to say she can lock down a backline, I'll agree with you. If you want to say that her blight damage punishes enemies that take multiple actions, I'd agree with you, but there's no mention of that. Alright, last one is Hellion. Is that the end? Man, why does this just get so short? I need more. The Hellion is a beastly class that can devastate the enemy when she's in the first position. She can dish out powerful attacks, stun enemies, cherry-pick backline supports. She does struggle in long, drawn-out fights as her abilities debuff her, but even a mediocre support on the team can offset this. So I'm already like lightly annoyed here that backline is hyphenated here and that it's not hyphenated here. Like, please, consistency. Like, did some editor just not read this? They just let this go through and print it and they just didn't care. They felt okay and justified to put ads on this to like try and make money off me. I'm actually upset. So this like explanation here. So yes, she can dish out powerful attacks. Yes, she can stun. Yes, she can like nuke backlines. That's actually like the best thing about her. She does struggle in long, drawn-out fights, as her abilities debuff her. Only 2 of these do. It's Breakthrough, which you're probably not using anyway, and it's Bleed Out, which Bleed Out has a fat damage bonus of 20% that offsets the first Bleed Out, and if you're going to spam Bleed Out, you're not in it for the damage, you're in it for the gnarly 5-point bleed. So this thing that she struggles in long, drawn-out fights is just not true. I can definitely see the idea that Hellion is a powerful class. I do not think she's the best class in the game. I would argue that you could say Shieldbreaker, you could say Highwayman, you could say maybe PD, something like that. But I don't think you can say Hellion in like good faith. I also just want to point out that when we talked about Highwayman and Bounty Hunter and whoever else in this list so far, the chief, or one of the chief complaints was they're not very durable. Hellion is just as durable as Highwayman and Bounty Hunter. She's around the same 45 HP threshold, and she has less speed. Hellion can absolutely get beat up in this game. And yet, for some reason, when it comes to this character, suddenly having under 50 HP is not an issue. Alright, y'all, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Next up, Man-at-Arms Guide, probably Friday or Saturday. We'll see what happens there, but it's almost done, and it should be posted shortly. Join Discord if you haven't. Follow on Twitch, all that crap I talked about before. Let me know what y'all thinking. I'll link this down below, and I'll see you later.